The jungle training grounds of the Helios Academy were silent, but it was not the silence of peace. It was a charged quiet, like the pause before a storm. Towering trees pressed inward, their roots weaving over each other in tangled knots. The air was thick with humidity, every breath a weight, and the constant hum of insects created a rhythm that clawed at the recruits' focus. This was not a natural jungle. Every plant, every pool of water, every shifting shadow had been deliberately chosen to test a soldier's endurance and cunning. The test that had broken so many before them was about to begin again. Captain Rains watched from the elevated command deck, his scarred face unreadable beneath the harsh glow of the monitors. He had seen men collapse in this trial, seen women vanish into the green haze and never return the same. His voice carried over the comms system with the force of a hammer. This is your final evaluation. Succeed, and you enter the Ghost Division. Fail, and you return home stripped of rank. You will not outrun the drones. You will not outfight them. Your only chance is to outthink them. Begin. The recruits moved as one at first, their boots sinking into mud, the stench of decay clinging to them. Among them was Kara Vey. Her dark eyes narrowed beneath the brim of her helmet. She had grown up in the slums of Vera City, where blending into the shadows had been less a skill and more a requirement for survival. Her confidence carried a sharp edge. She did not follow others. She expected others to follow her. But confidence could be mistaken for arrogance, and already the soldiers around her muttered that she was reckless. Dimitri Holt was her opposite, a mountain of man whose every step sent ripples through the swamp water. He carried his rifle as if it were an extension of his arm, yet subtlety was a foreign language to him. He grunted as he hacked through low-hanging branches, every movement loud enough to draw attention. "This is nonsense," he whispered, shaking his head. "A soldier fights, not hides. This test is an insult to our strength. You'll be the first eliminated if you keep swinging that blade like a lumberjack," Kara snapped, not bothering to lower her voice. Her words drew smirks from a few nearby recruits, but Holt only glared at her, his jaw tight. Walking a step behind them was Malik Orion, calm where others were restless. His lean frame seemed to fold into the shadows, his eyes scanning not just the path, but the canopy above, the water below, the smallest tremor of movement. He rarely spoke, but when he did, it was with measured certainty. The captain was clear. "We can't win this by force. Every sound you make is an invitation. Remember that." The jungle seemed to listen. A sharp word echoed overhead, and the recruits froze. From a canopy descended a drone, its sleek body glinting like an insect's carapace. It rotated slowly, sensors flashing as it scanned the terrain. One recruit panicked, sprinting for cover, but the moment his foot splashed in the water, the drone emitted a shrill tone. A beam of red light struck his chest, marking him as eliminated. His scream of frustration rang through the comms before he tore off his helmet. A handful of soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. The game had begun. Kara pressed herself against the trunk of a massive tree, her pulse steady. She had expected this. Fear was the first weapon the Academy used. Take out the weakest quickly, and the rest would crumble under pressure. She smeared a handful of mud across her cheek, instinct guiding her even before strategy. The wet earth was cool, grounding. She could feel its texture cling to her skin, dulling the shine of sweat. "Primitive tricks," Holt muttered, watching her. "You think dirt will save you?" "It already has," she replied, nodding at the drone, which hovered inches away yet failed to notice her against the mottled bark. The machine turned, uninterested, and drifted toward the next group. Holt's scowl faltered. Malik crouched nearby, observing. "She's right. The sensors don't just detect movement. They read heat. The mud lowers your signature. The vines, the leaves, they're not obstacles, they're shields." He dipped his hands into the muck, spreading it across his arms. "If you want to vanish, you have to become part of this place." For a moment, Holt hesitated, his pride at war with reason. Then he copied the motion, smearing mud over his exposed skin. He did not admit Kara's victory, but his silence spoke enough. Hours passed in slow, grinding movements. One by one, recruits dropped out, some caught by drones, others collapsing from exhaustion. The swamp was merciless, leeches clinging to ankles, water seeping into boots until every step was agony. Yet amid the misery, Kara, Holt, and Malik remained together, their uneasy alliance forged by necessity. Kara provided boldness, Holt the raw strength to clear paths when silence was impossible, and Malik the strategy that kept them alive. At one point, a drone descended so close they could see their reflections in its polished surface. Kara held her breath, every muscle screaming to move, to fight, to do something. But Malik's hand on her arm kept her still. The machine lingered, sensors whirring, then drifted away as though they were nothing more than part of the jungle floor. Kara exhaled slowly, realizing with a thrill that invisibility was not a trick. It was a choice, a discipline. By dusk, only a handful of recruits remained. Captain Rains watched from the command deck, his brow furrowed. What unsettled him was not how many had failed, but how effectively a few had adapted. He leaned toward the officer beside him. Do you see it? They're not just surviving, they're learning to disappear. If they continue like this, we may not be able to track them at all. Back in the jungle, Kara wiped grime from her eyes, her face a mask of streaked mud and crushed leaves. She glanced at Holt and Malik, both similarly covered, both transformed from uniformed soldiers into creatures of the swamp. They did not look human anymore. They looked like phantoms. The realization sent a shiver down her spine, not of fear, but of anticipation. The test was far from over, but something had already shifted. They were no longer merely recruits stumbling through hostile terrain. They were becoming something new, something even the Academy had not predicted. And as Kara watched the next drone pass overhead without pausing, she could not help but smile. The night deepened over the jungle, swallowing what little light remained, and the test became something harsher than a contest of tactics. Darkness stripped away the safety of distance, collapsing the world into sound, touch, and instinct. Every rustle carried menace. Every splash suggested discovery. For the recruits who still remained, survival meant silencing their own fear until they could not even hear it in their breathing. Kara crouched low in the water, her skin slick with mud and her hair plastered against her skull. Each inhale was measured, each exhale a whisper. The mud smelled of rot and stagnant water, but it disguised her. She knew that scent was her shield now, and she welcomed it. Malik stayed a few paces to her right, his silhouette almost indistinguishable from the moss-covered trunk he leaned against. His voice was calm when it came, barely a murmur. They've doubled the patrols. Drones are cycling faster. They've realized we're lasting too long. Kara's lips curved faintly. So we're getting under their skin. He shook his head. It's not skin we're under. It's data. Every second we remain undetected, they're recording it, trying to understand how we're escaping their algorithms. If we keep outsmarting them, they'll escalate. Dmitri shifted uncomfortably beside them, the mud dripping in rivulets down his forearms. Then we should strike first. Take one of those metal pests out and show them who they're dealing with. No, Malik's whisper was sharp, decisive. The moment we attack, we become targets. You want to fight? They'll give you one, and they'll win. Our strength is that they can't find us. Losing that advantage would be suicide. Dmitri scowled but held his tongue. He hated this kind of waiting, this quiet tension that demanded patience. His whole life had been defined by motion, by sparring, by lifting, by charging through obstacles. Here, force was useless. For the first time, he felt caged by his own body, as though his size betrayed him in every step. The recruits pressed deeper into the swamp. Water reached their thighs, warm and foul, carrying unseen creatures that brushed against their legs. The canopy above had become a labyrinth of shadow and light, fractured moonbeams offering the briefest glimmers of path. Around them, the sounds of others failing punctuated the night. A scream to the east cut short by static, the hollow bang of a stunned pulse to the west. The jungle was thinning their numbers with brutal efficiency. Hours blurred together. Hunger gnawed, Exhaustion pulled at their limbs, but the three moved with growing cohesion. Kara had begun to see patterns. How Malik read the terrain like a book. How Dmitri, despite his volume, had a soldier's endurance that let him carry their supplies without complaint. She had also seen how fear lived in them differently. Malik's turned into calculation, Dimitri's into anger, and hers into sharpened defiance. They were not friends, not yet, but necessity bound them with invisible threads. The deeper they went, the more it seemed the jungle itself conspired against them. Vines clung to their legs like hands. Branches snapped without warning, and the constant chirr of unseen insects made silence nearly impossible. Every failure threatened exposure. Once, Kara's foot slipped on a submerged root, sending ripples across the water. She froze, breath locked in her throat. A drone descended, its sensors flaring, beams crisscrossing the swamp like a net. For a long, torturous moment, its light swept over her head. She thought it had caught the reflection in her eyes, thought the test was over. But then Malik shifted a single vine, letting it sway across the beam. The movement confused the scanner, tricking it into following the wrong target. The drone veered away, chasing nothing, and Kara released her breath in a trembling rush. She shot him a look of gratitude, but Malik only nodded. He didn't need thanks. He needed focus. Tension mounted between Kara and Dmitri as the hours stretched on. He muttered often, words thick with frustration. This isn't soldiering. This is cowardice. We're rats hiding from cats. And yet the rats are still alive, Kara snapped back. If you want to run headlong into the jaws of a machine that doesn't tire or bleed, go ahead. We'll watch you fall. He bristled, fists clenching, but Malik intervened before the argument grew too loud. Both of you shut it. Your anger is a signal, and signals get you killed. Remember what this place teaches. Survival isn't about who you are when you fight, but who you are when you vanish. The words silenced them. Kara grudgingly respected the reminder, even if she hated being checked. Dmitri seethed. Though his gaze dropped, his pride bruised. Still, when they moved again, they moved more carefully. Sometime past midnight, Kara made a discovery that changed everything. While pressing against a wall of ferns, she noticed the drone's scanners pass directly over her, yet the sensors didn't react. Her hand brushed the plant's leaves, and she realized they were slick with a strange resin. It wasn't ordinary foliage. She smeared it across her arm experimentally. The material cooled against her skin, and when the drone returned, its sensor swept past her without hesitation. She grinned. The plants help. They distort the heat. It's not just mud, it's this resin. Cover yourself in it. They followed her lead, spreading the substance across exposed skin, layering it over mud. The effect was immediate. The next drone hovered close enough to touch, but its scanners flickered uncertainly before turning away. Malik's eyes widened at the implication. They've engineered this environment. The jungle isn't just natural terrain. It's part of the test. Dmitri snorted. So, then we use it. If the Academy wants ghosts, we'll give them ghosts. For the first time, he sounded less like a skeptic and more like a believer. His anger had shifted into determination, and Kara recognized the same transformation sparking inside herself. This wasn't merely about survival anymore. It was about mastering something no machine could predict. The jungle was no longer their enemy. It was their ally, and perhaps their weapon. By the time dawn painted the sky with pale light, the recruits had dwindled to fewer than a dozen. Kara, Malik, and Dmitri crouched on a rise of dry ground, their bodies unrecognizable beneath layers of mud, vines, and resin. They looked more like creatures of the swamp than soldiers. Kara caught sight of her reflection in the water, a pair of eyes glinting from a mask of earth and leaf. It unsettled her, yet it thrilled her too. She was disappearing, becoming something else entirely. Above them, Captain Rains stared at the monitors, his frown deepening. The feeds blurred, static rolling across the screens where Kara's team should have been. His officers adjusted the controls, puzzled. We can't locate them, sir. They're in the zone, but the system won't tag them. It's like they've vanished. Rains leaned forward, his voice low. Not vanished. Adapted. Back on the ground, Kara rose slowly, stretching her muscles. The trial was far from finished, but she felt stronger now, not weaker. The jungle had not beaten her. It had remade her. As she and her companions pressed on into the shifting green, a single thought blazed bright in her mind. They were no longer recruits fighting to pass a test. They were already ghosts, and the academy didn't even know it. The dawn light pierced through the canopy, fractured into shards by the dense weave of leaves, and the jungle seemed to shift with it. For Kara, the faint illumination only made the world more treacherous. Shadows became sharper, movements more pronounced, and the drones now flew lower, hungrier, their sensors sweeping in restless arcs. She crouched beneath a wall of roots, every nerve tuned to the faint buzz overhead. Beside her, Malik studied the terrain as if the ground itself whispered instructions. Dmitri, his face obscured by hardened resin and mud, sat like a statue, gripping his weapon with white knuckles. The night had forced them to learn patience. The morning would test whether that patience could survive. Their progress slowed as the swamp deepened into marshland. Pools spread wider, the water rising to their waists in places, its surface broken by the occasional ripple of unseen creatures. The drones seemed more aggressive now, their sensors sharper, their search patterns tighter. Malik noticed the change first. "They've altered the code," he murmured. "The scans are overlapping. They're adapting to us." Kara frowned. "Then we stay ahead of them. That's what this is about, isn't it? Outthink the machine until it can't keep up." But Malik didn't answer immediately. He looked at the resin smeared on his arm, then at the vines hanging heavy with dew. His eyes narrowed. "No, this is more than a test. The Academy didn't just drop us in a jungle. They engineered the jungle to evolve with us. Every plant, every insect, every shift in the drones. It's all part of the same system." Dmitri growled softly. "What does that change? Mud's mud, drones are drones. We beat them by enduring." "It changes everything," Malik said, "because it means we're not just fighting machines. We're fighting an environment designed to erase us." As if to punctuate his words, a sudden whine split the air. A drone streaked into view, faster than the others, its scanner sharper, its frame heavier with reinforced plating. It moved like a predator that had learned from its prey. Kara's pulse quickened as she pressed herself against the water's edge. The drone hovered, paused, and then fired a beam into the water, sending steam erupting where it struck. It wasn't scanning anymore, it was flushing them out. "Move," Kara hissed, and the three slipped beneath the surface, their lungs straining as they pressed themselves against the swamp bed. The heat of the beam seared above them, close enough to blister skin. Kara's chest burned, her vision narrowing. Just as she thought she'd be forced to rise, the drone veered off, chasing movement deeper in the marsh. Somewhere in the distance, a scream echoed and ended abruptly. Another recruit gone. When they surfaced, gasping, Dmitri spat swamp water and snarled. "Enough of this hiding. We need to strike back." Malik shook his head violently. "Not yet." But Kara surprised them both by nodding at Dmitri. "He's right. If they're escalating, then hiding alone won't save us. We need to take control of the fight. We can't just vanish. We need to confuse them." Malik's brow furrowed, but he saw the truth in her words. They had avoided elimination so far, but the drones were learning too quickly. Unless they disrupted the system itself, they would eventually be hunted down like the others. He exhaled slowly. "Fine, but we do it carefully. We strike only when the jungle favors us." They began to set a trap. Dmitri used his strength to drag a fallen branch into the water, positioning it beneath the roots of a massive mangrove. Kara coated it with resin, creating a false heat signature, while Malik studied the drone patrols, timing their cycles. When the machine finally approached, Kara signaled. The three pressed into the mud, still and silent, as the drone's sensors locked onto the decoy. It swooped lower, scanning the branch. In that instant, Dmitri lunged, hauling it down into the water with brute force. The machine thrashed, its engines screaming, but Kara leapt forward and jammed vines into its intake vents. Malik slammed a stone against its sensor array, shattering the lens. The drone went dark, its body sinking into the muck with a hiss. The silence afterward was deafening. The three of them crouched, panting, hearts hammering. Then Kara laughed, a short, sharp sound that echoed strangely in the stillness. We did it. We actually took one down. Malik's expression was grim. And in doing so, we've told the system that we're more dangerous than it realized. It won't underestimate us again. He was right. Moments later, the jungle itself seemed to react. The ambient hum of insects dulled, replaced by the growing whine of more drones. The sky darkened as they descended in greater numbers, their red sensors glowing like watchful eyes. Kara felt her throat tighten. They had survived the night, but now the test had shifted into something harsher, something more unforgiving. Still, she saw something in Dimitri she hadn't before. His grin was feral, his eyes alight. He looked at her and Malik with renewed respect. You see, we're not rats. We're hunters, and now they'll fear us. Kara didn't share his grin, but she felt the same fire in her chest. Fear was no longer the chain binding them. It was the weapon in their hands. Every step through the swamp from then on was deliberate, not desperate. They smeared themselves in thicker coats of mud and resin, wrapped vines around their limbs until they looked less like soldiers and more like jungle wraiths. They moved silently, and when the drones swept past, they no longer froze in terror. They studied them, memorized their weaknesses, waiting for the next chance to strike. Above, in the control center, Captain Rains leaned forward, eyes narrowing at the fractured screens. Impossible, one of the officers whispered. They took one down. 3 recruits against a drone designed to outthink them. Rains said nothing, but his thoughts churned. The Ghost Division had been built on the idea that machines would always dominate the battlefield. Yet here, in the swamp, the truth was unraveling. Humans weren't just surviving. They were evolving faster than the systems designed to contain them. He clenched his fist behind his back, uneasy. If this was only a test, what would they become on a real battlefield? On the ground, Kara, Malik, and Dimitri reached a rise where the swamp drained into drier ground. The air was clearer, the canopy less dense, but the risk greater without cover. They huddled, dripping and exhausted, yet more unified than they had ever been. Malik's voice was quiet, but firm. From this point, the drones will tighten their net. We can't move as 3 individuals. We have to move as one shadow. If even one of us falters, the others are lost. Kara met his gaze, and then Dimitri's. For the first time, she saw not rivals, not liabilities, but equals. They nodded together, a silent pact. No matter what the jungle threw at them next, they would not break apart. The jungle exhaled, the drones circling closer, their red eyes multiplying in the haze. Kara smeared one last streak of mud across her face and whispered, "Then let's vanish." The last stretch of the test began without ceremony. The jungle that had cloaked them for so long thinned into uneven terrain where water gave way to patches of exposed soil and fractured stone. Beyond the trees, only a quarter-mile away, the recruits could see the distant shimmer of the command center's perimeter. Its armored walls gleamed under the sun, an impossible target that still beckoned like salvation. Between them and that finish line lay open ground dotted with sparse cover, the perfect killing field for drones. The air vibrated with the sound of engines. More machines patrolled here than anywhere else. To cross was to risk everything. Kara crouched behind a cluster of rocks, scanning the field with narrowed eyes. Sweat and grime dripped down her face, but she didn't wipe it away. Every drop reminded her of how far she had come, how much she refused to surrender now. "That's it," she whispered. "One last obstacle." Dimitri gave a grim laugh, tightening the grip on his rifle. "One last suicide run, you mean? That's not ground, that's a graveyard." Malik studied the sky, tracing the movement of the drones as if he could hear their patterns. His lips moved without sound, counting intervals, predicting sweeps. Then he lowered his gaze, meeting theirs. Not a suicide run, a performance. They expect us to panic, to sprint, and be cut down. So we don't give them what they expect. Kara leaned closer. Then what? He pointed to the jungle they had just left, to the vines clinging to their bodies, to the resin caked on their skin. We finished this the way we survived. We don't charge. We don't fight. We vanish. If the jungle taught us to become invisible there, then invisibility has to follow us out here. We turn their certainty against them. Dmitri bristled. You're saying we walk into open ground and pretend we don't exist? I'm saying, Malik replied evenly, we prove we've become more than soldiers. We prove we're ghosts. The weight of his words sank into them. Kara's chest tightened, but not with fear. It was anticipation, the thrill of knowing she was about to do something no recruit had done before. She touched the mud streaking her arms, feeling its roughness like armor. Then let's haunt them. They waited for the right moment. A patrol of 3 drones circled high, their scanners pulsing across the ground in overlapping arcs. At Malik's signal, the 3 recruits rose in unison and stepped from cover. They did not sprint. They did not crouch. They moved with steady, deliberate calm, bodies angled to mimic shadows, steps aligned with the rhythm of the machines above. Each time a scanner beam swept their way, they froze in synchrony, breath stilled, blending with the earth itself. To the observers in the command center, it must have looked as though the machines faltered, skipping over empty terrain. Rains leaned forward at the control deck, his voice harsh. Where are they? Where's the trio? His officers scrambled, screens flickering with static. Sir, the sensors aren't tagging them. We're losing track every time the drones pass. It's as if they're gone. Rains finished, his jaw tightening. On the ground, the recruits pressed forward, every second stretching into eternity. Kara's heart thundered in her ears, yet she forced her body to remain steady. Dimitri's muscles trembled with restraint, the urge to move faster almost unbearable, but he obeyed the rhythm Malik dictated. Malik's eyes never left the sky, his mind calculating angles and timing with ruthless precision. Together, they became one shadow sliding across the field. Halfway across, disaster nearly struck. A drone veered unexpectedly, diving lower, its sensors flaring brighter than before. Kara's stomach dropped as the beam swept dangerously close. For a heartbeat, it lingered on Dmitri, who stood in open ground with nowhere to hide. His jaw clenched, but he did not move. Kara held her breath, praying the resin and mud would hold. The drone's light flickered, uncertain, then shifted away, convinced of nothing. It soared past, chasing phantoms that did not exist. Dmitri exhaled slowly, his eyes meeting Kara's. She saw in them not fear but trust, the trust she had doubted he could give. For the first time, they were no longer at odds. They were aligned. Step by step, they reached the far side of the field. The perimeter wall loomed, a towering monolith of steel and concrete. A single access point waited ahead, guarded by automated turrets and final drone patrols. Malik signaled for them to stop, his voice a whisper. One last push. No mistakes. Kara nodded, her voice steady. Then we finish it. They advanced together, timing each movement with the turret's rotations, slipping into blind spots with fluid precision. The drones circled above, but their scanners seemed confused, unable to lock on heat signatures that blended so completely with the environment. Each step was an act of defiance, a declaration that human adaptability was beyond calculation. At the final moment, Kara pressed her hand against the gate's scanner. The system beeped, recognizing the presence of a recruit. The gate slid open with a hiss. Inside, silence reigned. No alarm sounded. No drones descended. Only the stunned faces of officers greeted them from the observation deck above. Kara, Malik, and Dmitri stepped forward, mud-covered and ragged, yet radiating the calm of those who had mastered more than survival. They had redefined it. Captain Rains descended the platform slowly, his boots echoing against the metal floor. He stopped before them, studying each in turn. His gaze lingered on Kara, then Malik, then Dmitri, as though searching for cracks in the illusion they had created. Finally, he spoke, his voice heavy. "You weren't supposed to make it this far." Kara tilted her head, her lips curving faintly. "Then maybe you underestimated us." Rains exhaled, a sound that was part sigh, part reluctant admiration. Machines evolve fast, but not as fast as fear and instinct. You've proven that. You've done what even this program wasn't prepared for. His expression hardened again, though his eyes betrayed a spark of respect. "Welcome to the Ghost Division." The words carried weight, but more than that, they carried finality. The test was over, but none of them felt like recruits anymore. Kara felt the mud on her skin like a second self, the jungle's lessons etched into her muscles. Malik's calm precision now radiated authority, as though he had led them without needing the title. Dimitri's restless energy had hardened into controlled strength, no longer wild but purposeful. Together, they had crossed from being individuals struggling to survive into something far greater, a unit invisible to machines, unbound by fear and sharpened by trust. As they stood there, the jungle's distant hum still echoing in their ears, Kara looked at her companions and saw not just comrades, but equals, bound by an experience no simulation could ever erase. She raised her chin, mud cracking on her cheek, and whispered so only they could hear. "We didn't just pass. We became what they feared." Dimitri grinned, his teeth stark against the grime. Malik gave a rare smile, small but real. And together, they walked from the testing ground not as recruits, not as soldiers, but as ghosts. Proof that humanity's greatest strength was not its weapons or machines, but its capacity to adapt until it became something invisible, untouchable, unstoppable.